Hi everybody, your real estate expert Lance Moore, and in this series I'm talking about how to buy a house. Today I'm going to talk about how to pick a mortgage lender. If you don't need financing, don't worry about watching this video unless you just want more information. Alright, so how to pick a lender. First off, if you've already chosen a real estate agent, this is a good place to start. You could also ask some friends and family members, co-workers, get an idea who they would choose. Now, personally, I was in the mortgage banking industry for several years, and I was a co-owner of a mortgage company. There's three types of lenders out there. Number one is your big banks, your Bank of America, Wells Fargo. And then you have your mortgage bankers, and then you have your mortgage brokers. Now, I'm not a real big fan of the big banks or credit unions for that matter. I think there's a lot of credit unions that are really good. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with big banks. I'm not a fan of them, and the reason why I don't like big banks is because if you go into a bank like Bank of America or say a Wells Fargo, you're only using their money. So if you go in and you have a very unusual circumstance and maybe you don't qualify for their loan, they're not going to tell you, you don't qualify for our loan, go somewhere else. They're just going to say, you don't qualify for a loan, sorry. Now, you may go to a mortgage banker or a broker and qualify for theirs. So that's the problem. They're very, very limited because they only lend their money. If you're round, you're not going to be able to fit in their square hole. So it's not a really good way. Now, if you do use a bank, if you say Bank of America, which I am not a fan at all, I haven't had them close a transaction on time in years, if they even close it at all. So I got to say that. The only bank I would say that about. But let's say you go to a Wells Fargo or you go to a Bank of America. Always try to use a local loan officer. Don't use someone out of state because you've heard of the term out of state, out of mind, out of area, out of mind. That's really how it is. You want someone local that knows the local ways in Florida. And more specifically, I'm in Florida. I'm in Tampa, so the city you live in. So that would be my first personal recommendation, and I know a lot of lenders out there might be getting mad if they're watching this right now, especially if they work for Bank of America. But that's my opinion. I've worked with a lot of credit unions when I was in the lending business, and certainly not all of them. Credit unions, the good thing is they really care about their customer. The problem is they don't really do a lot of training to their loan officers, unfortunately. And, a lot of times when you're going into and getting a loan with a bank or a credit union, a lot of times the loan officer is on a salary plus bonuses, and you want someone who, if they don't get you a loan, they don't get paid any money. That's the best way you're going to get a loan. So I'm a big fan of bankers. Now, really the difference between a banker and a broker is a banker lends their own money and will underwrite the file, usually in-house. They're also called correspondent lenders. Now, I've worked for bankers before, and if bankers just don't have a competitive program, let's say you go in and maybe you're a veteran and they're not real competitive on VA loans, let's just say, they'll usually have brokers that they work with as well, and they could do different things. So they're usually good. Brokers, I've worked for brokers when I was in lending as well, and it's the same thing. But the difference is brokers have access to dozens and dozens of lenders. Don't get fooled by that. Most brokers only have about 5 to 7 lenders they work with at any given time. They might have a lender, for their conventional financing. They have a lender for their government financing. They have a lender for their jumbo financing. So don't get caught up into all that. But the difference is between bankers and brokers. If they don't find a way to say yes, they don't get paid. And a lot of times what people will do is they'll go out and they'll be picking maybe 3 companies. and they'll call up for a rate quote. But you really, when you're calling up for a rate quote, you need to ask very specific questions, and you need to do it all on the same day, because you could call one institution on Tuesday and rates could have changed up or down on Wednesday. And then you need to call the same day, you need to give the same parameters for each one of them. So I'm calling, I want to get a loan amount of $200,000, and what's your rate lock? Now, I'm not a big advocate of going around and doing rate shopping, because at the end of the day, lenders all get their money from the same place at the same price. If you call 10 lenders, probably 9 of them are going to give you the same quote for the most part. Now, banks will generally be a little bit more in the interest rate, but less in the fees, because everything's in-house. Where a broker, they get their pricing at wholesale. So there you could usually be more competitive on interest rates, but they're a little higher on closing costs because they have to sort of outsource it and get it underwritten over here in the processor and all that stuff. So get the information and call them all up, talk to them, ask them again the question, why should I work with you? What makes you different? What makes your company different? Whatever you do, whatever they tell you, once you lock in the rate, get a rate lock. You don't want to be on different pages and they tell you one interest rate, and then all of a sudden you show up at closing and it's a completely different interest rate. Maybe it's 0.25% higher, because the seller doesn't really care about your loan. All they know is you have to close. So get it in writing from the lender. I can't tell you how many people, when I used to be in lending, pretty much everybody that I work with, I always put everything in writing. No one ever asked me, but I wanted it all in writing for the documentation. So always ask for it in writing, and really try to take the person who you feel is looking out for your best interest. Because at the end of the day, you could have the best interest rate in the world, but if you're on the wrong loan program, the interest rate's sort of irrelevant. So I hope this helps you. Leave a comment if you have any questions, you have anything to say. If you work for Bank of America, please don't leave a comment, because I don't think it's going to be real nice, but it is what it is. And, if you like my videos, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck in buying a home. Have a great day.